with Alex Taylor with his new COVID cut. Today we've got two fantastic talks from Sheb Rehman and Lewis Holmes. We have got an hour of talk, so please do add your questions to the Q&A, and if you have to dip out, you can play this session back as it is recorded. So Sheb's talk today, he'll go into a bit more detail. It's not on report design as previously advertised. We're going to do an overview of the April release. So Sheb will go into a bit more detail about that shortly. And then in the second half, Lewis will be doing a talk on advanced Power Query and when many-to-many relationships are okay to use. So just quickly go through my slides. I know you've probably seen these a few times now, but these are for the new guys. So firstly, thank you to everyone that tuned in for episode 1, 2, and 3. You can see that Sheb on your left-hand side, Ben at the top, and Lewis at the bottom corner. Just quick information about the Power BI user group. We've been going for 3.5 years. We do meet-up sessions in face-to-face. I have no idea when they will actually happen again in Manchester, but hopefully at some point this year. But for the time being, we'll be doing webinars. We've now got over 6,000 members on LinkedIn, 2,500 members on Meetup, and as I said, it's one of the best user groups in the UK around tech. And it's fun, and we do share all our documents like we do with today's session. As I said, we've got good reviews. I'll move on quickly. A little bit more information about myself. I'm a tech recruiter. There's me when I had hair, and I've been doing it for 16 years. I'm a meetup organizer. I've been running various different meetups, events, roundtables, etc. And I head up the data analytics team for Rob Walters in the UK. If you are looking for a new role or you are looking to recruit, please don't hesitate to get in touch. My details are alex.taylor@robwalters.com and my number is below. Take another minute to look at that, and then today's session, Sheb will be starting with us shortly, followed by Lewis, and then we'll be wrapping up around about 1:30. And please do add your questions to the chat box. While Sheb is talking, we'll have Ben and Lewis answering the questions, and when Lewis is talking, Ben and Sheb will be answering questions, and any of those questions that they're not sure about, they will push to the relevant speakers. So enjoy your session today. Quick intro to the speakers. So Sheb is an MCSE expert, a BI trainer and data specialist. He's been training Power BI for the last 4 to 5 years. He is a Power BI architect, and he's now picking up machine learning and predictive analytics models, and he comes very highly recommended, and I've known him for around 4 years. Lewis is MCSA certified BI contractor, been here for 10 years. I've known him from various different contracts. He is a Microsoft Stack expert who's got a passion for Power BI, like all of us. And Ben, MVP certified. He is a Power Online and Power BI specialist. He runs a consultancy for over 25 years, and he's been doing various different events across the world. So without further ado, I will pass you now to Sheb Rehman, and he will give us your overview on April's update. Over to you, Sheb.
Hey, Sheb, do you want to share some content, and I can share that for you?
I will, yep. Just bear with me. Yep, is that okay? Have you got my screen?
Not yet at my end. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Add that in.
Excellent. Okay, so yes, there has been a slight change in the topic. So I was going to cover Power BI report design, and it's a talk that I've done a couple of times before, a few of the user groups, and had some really good feedback, and I thought it would be nice to go over that again. But with the release of the Power BI updates last week, I thought it'd be a good time to get onto those, because I think a lot of us have seen the updates in a lot of different posts, but haven't had a chance to really sort of have a look at them. And same with myself, and having been through them within the past week, I thought it'd be a good session just to go over those topics and the main ones that we can potentially use in our sort of day-to-day reporting. So excuse me, I'm going to get straight into that, and we can look at the main features that have been released. Okay, so I'm going to go into my report. So the first thing, one of the main ones, I think you might have noticed was the personalized visuals. Now there's been some changes to the reports where now you can amend and update and personalize each individual sort of visual on the report. So let's say, for example, this is my crime hotspots that I just uploaded recently. I can go over to this personalized visual over here, and I can click on this option here and create and amend this sort of visualization type here. I select this and let's say, for example, okay, well, I don't like that graph. I want to change it to this graph here. Yep. And then say, okay, well, I don't want to view this unable to prosecute. I can then remove that field as well from there. So now I'm only seeing my crime types by a stacked bar chart. Okay. Now, at any point, if, for example, you know, we sort of get to a stage where, okay, let's add in the number of unable to prosecute there. That adds that option in there. We can then sort of say, well, we have the option to say, okay, well, let's revert back to the original report there as well. Okay, so we can apply to all these different visuals here. Go into here, let's look at a line graph. It's not really the right data for that visual, but users, you know, now have the ability to choose their own visuals. So a lot of the times, I think this has come around, you know, with users wanting to sort of almost see things in their own way. You know, some people see things better with different graphs or certain graphs and certain visualizations, and not always what the developer you know, has created. So this way you can personalize that view, create your own chart and update it and see it exactly as you want there. Okay, and once you have created it, so let's change this one again. So I'm going to change this to this stacked bar chart here, and then I'm going to remove this field here. Okay, and from last week's, we can then create a bookmark. Okay, so we can add a personal bookmark, and we can say this is my home page. Make that the default view, and then we can save that. So now every time you come into the report, you've now got your own personalized view of that data instead of the one that was originally published, without affecting anybody else's experience with that as well. Okay, now we can, again, like I said, we can sort of revert this back. So if we did want to revert back to the original, we can click on this visual, and then we've got the reset this visual option here, which will then turn it back to how it was before. Okay, now that's the user experience on the user side of things, but how do we set that up on the Power BI side of things? So let's go over to Power BI now, and we'll see how we can actually get that set up. Okay, so now with this being a sort of preview feature, we first have to go and switch it on in our options and settings. Okay, so we go into our options and settings, and there's a couple of things we need to do. So first thing we need to do is go to our preview features, and we need to highlight this and say, okay, personalize visual, switch that on. Okay. Secondly, we need to then go down to our report settings, and down at the bottom of report settings, we've got another option here that says personalized visuals allow. Okay, so this is switched off by default, and it won't be visible unless you click the preview features. So you'll have to click this one on to say, okay, personalized visuals, click OK, and then it'll ask you to restart. Once you restart, you'll have to come back into the report settings and then click on this personalized visual option here. Okay, and then we click OK to that. Now, as you click OK to that, again, the visual option will appear at the top of your visual here. Okay, now when you click on this, nothing will happen because this will only happen on the user experience end. But let's say, for example, okay, I've got this crimes by location, okay, but I don't want you know, any changes to happen to this particular graph. Now I can go over to my format option here. I can go down to where it says visual header, and visual header, if I scroll right down to the bottom, then I've got the personalized visual option here that I can switch on or I can switch off. So at the moment I switch it on, and then you see the little icon appears at the top there. So now users can now go and amend this on the front end. But if I don't want them to do that, I can switch that off, and then that will always stay as a map visual on the front end. Okay, so that's the way we can sort of switch that on and off for each individual visual there. Okay, so that's the way we do that. We go into our visual header option, and you can see we've got a number of options here where you can show and hide any of the sort of different icons we've got there. And one of the new ones we've got is the personalized visual option there. Okay, so that's the personalization visual that we have introduced in April 2020. Okay, so there was the Power BI were going to sort of release the automatic filter pane experience. So they were going to update everybody's reports this month to use the new filter experience, but they've delayed that now due to sort of obviously the current situation. They've delayed that, and they'll be rolling that out next month. So if you have got any reports that are still using the old filter experience, that will automatically change next month. So if you do have any reports using that, I'd go and change those just to make sure that it doesn't affect any of your reports. So that's the filter experience here, which will be automatically updated next month. Okay, so what else is new this month? So another thing that was new this month is that the themes. So if you go over to the themes, we have had themes in preview for the last sort of number of months, but now this is generally available. Now themes is great because we can go into a theme and we can use it, chop and change our view of our data however we want. So if we select different theme here, then it will apply and change as you wish. Okay, now whatever sort of current report or current theme you're working will appear at the top of your list there, here. And let's say, okay, you've got your theme ready, but what you can do is then say, okay, well, I want to customize this theme. Now they've also made some changes to this to give you a bit of a better experience to get your branding and your colors for your company right. So let's say, for example, we've got your color options here. We can click on the drop down here, and now we've got 3 different ways we can select your colors. So we can use a color palette that you've got here. We've got the sort of different color palettes down here, and then we've got both the hex and we've got the RGB. So either generally when you have your marketing or your sort of branding guidelines within your company, it's probably usually got one or the other, and then you generally go online, try and get a converter from hex to RGB, etc., bring those back in and you know, update the color details on that. But now you've got all these options in here now, so you don't have to go and find that conversion. You can use the RGB here, or you can use the hex value there as well. So we can change the color. So let's, you know, we'll select a couple of different options here. So I'll select the green there, and then let's go over here and let's select blue here as well. And then we can also go into advanced options, and we can change the different levels of elements that we want to do that as well. And if you want more information, you can go and have a look at that later on. That'll give you more detail on that. Additionally, we can go in and change all the details for text. So if you've got certain branding fonts that you have to use for your company, you can set those here. So every time you do create a new report or new visuals, the sort of font will be set to that particular font. And same with sort of titles, cards, KPIs. There are really sort of good sort of detailed options that you can go into here and update. We can also go into sort of visuals and page backgrounds and wallpapers as well. I don't know if you've noticed, if you've ever imported a background into a Power BI report, it comes in by default. It comes in with 100% transparency, which I've never understood why. But now you can sort of turn that off and say, okay, well, if I do import a background, I want it to be visible and not transparent. So that's something you can set there, you know, automatically as well. Okay, so plenty of different options there. Filter pane as well. You can colour the filter pane to make sure people do see that. Sometimes it does get lost with its simple grey colour, but we can go and change the background of that if we wish to as well. So we changed a couple of colours there. If we apply that, that will automatically apply that straight away and hopefully update some of the colours there. So now I've got that nice green that I updated that colour to. And we can go into even more sort of you know, detailed sort of you know, settings for reports, and that's done through the JSON file. But what we can do, we can save this theme as well as a template. So if we save that current theme, we save it out and then save it as a JSON file, and then that'll be available to then go and edit in a text editor and go into a bit more detail there. So that's been around for a little while, but this month it was made generally available, so that should be bug free, shall we say. Okay. Okay, so another feature that was released this month was the lasso select. Now the lasso select is just in preview as well. Again, you'll have to go into your options and settings to enable that. But essentially what I used to do to select each individual, I used to control select each of these visuals here. Okay, but now what I can do is I can sort of lasso select all of these like this. Okay, now it is a little bit buggy. I have tried to sort of use it, but again, you know, it is in preview, so there will be sort of a few bugs. So if I sort of try and select it like this, it won't work. So as you can see, it's not selected anything. You do have to sort of cover everything and the whole visual with the lasso, and then it will select those visuals there. So if it just touches on another graph, so as you can see, I'm just sort of halfway going over some of these, it's not selecting it, and until I sort of cover the whole visuals, and then it will select the ones that are fully lassoed, you know, with this tool here. Okay, so let's say for example up here I want to sort of lasso all these. I can still control select and unselect once I've done that as well, and then I can still go into my options over here, and I can say, okay, well, let's reduce the size of these visuals here, and then I can also amend the category all at the same time as well by doing a lasso select. Okay, so that's a new lasso feature that's coming. I'm sure there'll be some additional changes to that coming up in the next sort of couple of months as well. But if you do have feedback on that, please give that to Microsoft, and they'll I'm sure they'll get onto any of that. Okay, so that was the lasso select. Another feature that was updated or brought into Power BI this month was the conditional formatting for matrix tables. So I'm just going to switch this visual here. I'm just going to switch this to a matrix table, and let's have a look. Let's push this across over here. Okay, and I'm going to put in a couple of extra fields. So I'm going to get my month, put it into columns. Okay, and then I've got my number of crimes. Okay, so I've got my crime types, and I've got my months, and I've got my totals here. So for the sort of default setting, or the normal sort of conditional formatting, always formatted the values that were here. We could never sort of format the totals. So now let's see if we go into our crimes and click on conditional formatting, go to our background color. We're going to set a couple of rules here. So I'm going to do this on a rule based on crime types. So I'm going to say if it's greater than, let's just do minus 1,000 by 50,000, and is less than, let's see what number, 2,000. and then we're going to set that to red. We'll add a new rule. It's greater than or equal to 2,000 and less than 50,000. A big arbitrary number there. And we'll click on green. And now we've got this option here at the top that says apply to values only, apply to values and totals, or we can apply to totals only. So if we apply it to values, change that to number, click OK. So we can see that this one applies the colors to just the values. If we go back into the conditional formatting, the background color, you can then say, actually, you know what, I want this on both values and totals. And then that will apply the value to the totals as well. Okay, so what we can do additionally is say, okay, well, the conditional formatting that I want to set to the total only, and I'm going to make this a bit bigger, so let's have a look at these total values here. So we're looking at, let's use 5,000. So 5,000, and we'll use 5,000 there. And we'll apply that to the totals only. So we only want to see the ones that are greater than 5,000. So we can see all of these are greater than 5,000. So now what we can do is then go in here, excuse me, add some additional formatting, but this time we're going to do the font color. We're going to apply the font color. Okay, and let's just do a color scale this time. And this time we're going to say the lowest value. Actually, now let's go to the rules. We'll add the rules again. This time we'll apply the same one, so minus 50,000, 5,000 number. This time, because it's in the individual, we're going to apply to the values only. We'll just look at the ones that are 1,000. And we'll set that to red. We'll apply a new rule. We'll apply 1,000 to there, and then 50,000 to that. Give that green. Change it to number, and then click OK. So now we can sort of mix and match both sort of formatting options there. We've now got a color scale of our fonts for our values, our individual values, but then our sort of total values we've now color scaled on a different level for a different value as well. So that was one of the updates that was brought out this current month as well. Okay, so the last one, or one of the main ones that I wanted to cover here was the sort of Q&A. Okay, so at the moment Q&A, I don't know if many people use Q&A, but I think a lot of users, or they struggle to use the Q&A because it's either it's not intuitive enough, or it doesn't understand what they're saying, or they don't know what to sort of type in the Q&A. So for example, if I double click here, it gives me some options here. Try one of these to get started. Okay, great. But let's say we want to suggest a few of our own. Okay, so what we can do in here is go into our Q&A setup, and that's just through this little cog here. So you get your Q&A up and you click on this cog option here, and you've got a number of different options to set with Q&A. So you've got your review questions. You can teach Q&A. You can manage some of the terms that are being taught or being used in the company, or you can also suggest some of your own. Now this is the new feature that's coming here, so we can sort of say, okay, well, let's suggest a couple. So we can say count of crimes by crime type as bar chart. Okay, so if we put that there, then on the right hand side you can see it's given us a visual or preview of what that might look like, and then we can say, okay, yep, let's add that. Okay, so count of crimes by crime type as bar chart. Okay, and then what we can also say is let's have a look. Let's change this to the count of crimes by outcome category. Okay, and then as clustered bar chart. Yep. So we can also, let's have a look, count street crimes. Excuse me. It gives you options as you go through here, so you can set these. So let's say, okay, we'll add that as well. And as you add them in order, you can save that. Okay, and then we'll come back out of here. And then if you give it a second, we'll restart this visual. So now each time someone goes into a Q&A, those questions that you've suggested are the first ones to sort of show up. Then we can click on one of those and say, okay, yeah, count of crimes as bar chart, and then turn that into a visual. And then that's the visual that they can go on and then use in their reports. Okay, so this way you can sort of give some suggestions to the user as to, you know, what sort of things you can ask, what sort of things you can say, what sort of, you know, questions you can ask Power BI, because a lot of the time users don't know, unless they're given sort of training, they don't know, you know, what can be, what's possible with the Q&A. But this way we can sort of suggest a few questions. Say we can ask this, you can show it as a bar chart, you can show it as a different visual, you can select the different measures that are available, and also the different dimensions that are available in the Power BI report as well. Okay, so there are some other features. Excuse me. There's been some minor changes to the decomposition tree. The tooltips have now appeared in the decomposition tree. So whereas before there was no tooltip, but now there's a tooltip option in there. And some more premium features that I won't be able to show today, but an auto page refresh, which is based on sort of direct connections to your source. Just one more change, or one more update, is the new sort of relative time filter. So when you add in a visual which is based on time, so I'm just going to add in my month over here, we've got our options that you can change. Now we have a relative time filter here, so we can change relative time, and we can select either the last 1, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, etc. And dependent, I guess this goes in hand with the automatic data refresh that they sort of published as well. So the idea is that as the data automatically refreshes, as your data changes, and you set this time filter to every 1 minute, then you should see your sort of data changing real time as it sort of moves along. So that's the sort of idea or the sort of scenario that would be used in. Okay. Thank you very much. Hope that was okay. Ben, I'll pass back to you, and I'll take any questions if there are any on the Q&A.
Thanks, Sheb. So I think we've got the Q&A pretty much nailed. I want to ask you a question, though.
Yeah.
Obviously, this personalized visuals piece, I think visuals are, you know, certain visuals have a specific role. You know, certain things you would use a stacked column chart for, others you might use a cluster column chart, others it may be best to show that as a horizontal, you know, bar chart, as I would call them. What are your thoughts on actually just allowing people to change those visuals?
So I always think that we should, as Power BI developers and professionals, we should know the best visual to use for that data. And when we design reports, or when you design reports, I'm sure you make sure that that's the case. Now, it is sometimes, you know, happens that you have execs, you have managers that say, well, actually, you know, I want a bar chart, I want a pie chart, and sometimes you just can't sort of get past, you know, get past that. And I guess this sort of, you know, covers that sort of scenario. And if people are able to view reports or data better in a different way, then so be it. You know, it's down to each individual. You know, it's down to each their individual preferences. But the good thing is that they can keep it for their personal view. It doesn't affect you know, everyone else. And if it helps them sort of understand the data, you know, better, then you know, it's a win-win. But generally, you know, we should as developers be creating sort of the right visual for that data instance.
I got you. Yeah, so I kind of agree. What you're really saying is we know best.
Putting it in the nice way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, brilliant. Thanks for that, Sheb. So that was really great. Lewis, if you want to share a screen, we'll send you live. Just a quick question on the Q&A while I'm there. This presentation is recording to see later. Yes, in that sort of strange bit of language that we have, this presentation is available to be seen later. So that's all well and good. And just look out for the email. Thank you. And Lewis, you are now good to go, my friend.
Thank you, Ben. Yes, so for those who haven't been to the talk before, my name is Lewis Holmes. I'm a business intelligence consultant, worked predominantly on the Microsoft Business Intelligence stack for the last 10 years and more recently Power BI. I'm going to do a quick talk today on some Power Query modeling about how to use many-to-many relationships, and I'm going to build a quick dashboard. As a starting point for this, I'm going to use the example I completed 2 weeks ago. So for those who weren't here 2 weeks ago, you can go back and watch the presentation again. But I've downloaded some data off the Internet Movie Database. I've loaded it into a local SQL Server instance. I've done some modeling on it and I've loaded it into Power BI. This report you see now is exactly how we left it at the end of the last talk. So I'm just going to go in now and carry on with some modeling, finish it off, make it all nice and tidy. So if I go into Power Query, the data, the tables we're loading in, we've set a filter using parameters. So for those who weren't here 2 weeks ago, we're bringing in movies from 1950 onwards, and those movies that have 10,000 votes, or it should be 10,000 votes or higher. So the first thing we notice is the title table, which shows us the movie names. This has a few thousand rows in there, but we also have the ratings as well. So these are the IMDb ratings. The files that IMDb provides have these as separate items because I guess not every single movie or TV show does have a rating. But the way we've filtered it down here means that they do. They all do have a rating. So to simplify the model, I'm going to merge together the title and the rating tables. And to do that, I'm simply going to go into the title and do a merge query. And I'm going to tell it to merge this title table with the rating table. We're going to do an inner join, and we tell it to merge on the title and title columns. And this handy little tooltip here has told us that the selection matches all the rows on both sides of the join. So that's great. We've got 8,000 movies, 8,000 ratings, everything lines up, everything's great. So we'll go and bring those in. By default, Power BI doesn't expose the columns from the other table. So you can click on the expand columns, and we're going to bring in just the rating and the votes. So we're going to take this opportunity to tidy this data up a bit as well. We've filtered the data set to only have movies, so we don't need this column because everything just says movie. It does have a couple of versions of the title, but we're just going to rename this title. Obviously, a TV show might have a start and the end year. We only have the year for a movie. And the column names it's given to ratings and votes have the other table name on it, so we'll just sort that out. The next thing we're going to resolve is the genre column. Each movie has up to 3 genres and they're in a comma-separated list. And I think we would like a nice slicer to pick out all the crime or all the drama movies. So just to help us along with that, I'll move it here, and I'm going to call this genre ID because we are going to join the list eventually. So to get a nice list of genres that we can put in the slicer, I'm just going to make a duplicate of this table. And we aren't interested in anything but the genre ID at this point, so we can remove the other columns. And now this will have 1 row per movie, and there are duplicates in here. So we're going to remove the duplicates. So this will give us 430 rows, 430 combinations. Now, just to make it a bit clearer for the steps I'm going to take shortly, I'm just going to filter this temporarily down to one of these. So we'll pick action, adventure, animation. So I'm going to create a copy of this column. And what we need to do is split out all the different genre types. And there's a function built into Power Query that does that. So you can right click, and before I do that, I'm going to call this genre. And it's called split column by delimiter. Now, Power Query is quite clever, and it's realised there is commas, and that is probably what we want to split it by, and indeed it is, and we don't even need to change anything now. We can just OK this. And now we've got 3 columns, and it's separated out. So what was action, adventure, animation has become action, adventure, animation in 3 columns. Now, this is OK, but we need this as 1 column so we can apply it into a slicer. So for those of you who've used Excel pivot tables, this will be familiar. If you select the 3 genre columns, you can then ask it to unpivot the data. And I've lost the option, but if you right click, it gives it you. Unpivot columns. And it's taken what were the 3 column names and given that as an attribute, and then it's put the values here. So we can now remove this column because we're not interested in what the column was called, and we can call this genre. So you can see how that's turned 1 row, which was action, adventure, animation, into 3 rows with the 3 genres. I'm just going to remove my filter so you can see the whole data set. So now we have lots and lots of rows here, and you can see that each one of these has been split into 3 rows. Now there are cases where there's not 3 genres, such as this one, and you can see it's kind of excluded the empty values anyway, so it's only given us 2. And indeed there are instances where there's just 1, I think, but action here is just mapped into 1 genre. So that's okay. We're going to call this genre because that's going to end up in the slicer. The ratings table that we just merged in, I'm just going to hide that from Power BI. We don't need to see that in there anymore. It's given us a warning about loss of data here. Inside the model in Power BI, I've used the rating table on visuals and within relationships. So this has been intelligent and warned me I could potentially break something, and I am going to break something, but we'll fix it. So if I just continue. And that should just about do us. I'm just going to hide some other columns here. So on the title principal table, this describes what movies an actor's been in. Obviously, an actor can be in more than 1 movie, so the principal ID is the actor ID, and the title is the movie ID. I think for our analysis here, we're just going to bring in the actors, so we don't care about the cinematographers, directors, so we're just going to apply a filter on the actors. And then, in fact, we can probably get rid of all these columns, so we're not interested in the category. This ordinal was the order in which they appear on the website, IMDb website. The job only applies to people that aren't actors, and the character name for the movie, I think we would just remove that as well. So now we have a nice simple joining table which allows the title to go into the actor table. And I'm just going to remove this column here. This gives a list of the movie IDs that the actor's most known for. So by removing that, it just makes things a bit simpler. I am a big believer that we should only bring into Power BI the data you actually need to report on. So everything looks okay here now, so I'm going to close and apply this, and my data will refresh. Hopefully it shouldn't take too long. Super. And it says, I think this pending change is due to my parameter. There we go. So it's broken this visual because it was referencing stuff on the ratings table that we don't have anymore. And in fact, I'm just going to remove all these because we're going to build something new. So if we have a look at our relationships, we now have our genre table, title, title principal, principal. Everything's good. So we're going to join genre ID to genre ID. Now, Power BI is warning us now that we're creating a many-to-many relationship because obviously many movies can have the same categorization, and on the genre table, we have to have duplicates because we split out action, adventure, drama into 3 rows. So this is warning us. generally it is a bad idea to do many relationships inside Power BI, and you should really try and avoid it where possible. Power BI will let you do it, but it does give you a warning, and it's kind of on your own head. I would encourage you to read the link it refers you to here. And the recommended course of action is to create a joining table. So instead of having a straight many-to-many relationship, you would have something that looks like this with a table in the middle. And that is kind of the standard approach you should try and adopt. In this instance, I think we're okay to go ahead as long as we understand the implications of it. And the guidance here does point out that it doesn't handle blank rows always as you would expect. You can't bring in columns using the related function. Related is a DAX function that allows you to add a column on a table from another table. This won't work in many-to-many relationships. And the filtering that you could alter using the OR function as well will not apply to tables on the other side of a many-to-many join. But if we're happy with those kind of restrictions, we can carry on with this. So we're going to join title to genre, and that's all okay. And you can see now we're filtering both ways, and it's a many-to-many relationship. Now, again, I would encourage you to hide the properties that the end user doesn't need to see in the report. So the genre ID we can hide, and we can hide the title ID. So these are all the primary keys. This table doesn't need to be visible at all, and the principal ID can be hidden as well. So now when you're in report view, you have a concise list of items here. The year column, it's detected it's a number, so it thinks we're going to want to perform aggregation on it. So if you drag a year into your canvas, it will just sum every year up. For the year column, we don't want it to operate like this. We want it to be an attribute. So a handy tip is if you click on year, you can go up to, I forget where it is, column tools, and you can tell it by default not to summarize the column. So if you make that change, you can then bring in year, and it doesn't automatically try and summarize it. It's put it as the axis for a bar chart, and then you can bring in rating perhaps, and this behaves exactly as you would expect it to. As the next step, I'm just going to create a few measures. So a piece of best practice that I like to do is have all my measures in one folder, and the way I achieve that is by creating a table by clicking on Enter Data, and we can call this something like metrics, if it lets me. And you have to have a single column to start with, so just put something in there, load that table in. And then I would go ahead and create all my measures against metrics. So I'm going to do a new measure, and we care about average rating. Average rating, and we probably care about the average number of votes to achieve that rating is. And we're going to also give it the total votes. I think that might be something that's useful. And finally, I think we're going to bring in a count of the movies. So we know how many movies in question there are. And I'm just going to count up the ID of the title. So now we have these measures here, we can remove this unnecessary column. If you remove it before you've created any measures, it will get rid of the whole table. But once you have a measure there, it keeps the table in place. And now I think if possible, you can remove the underlying columns, or hide them rather, because then the end user can't go off and create their own aggregations and potentially misunderstand something. So now you could save this Power BI file and distribute it to people in your business, and they can go off and do their own analysis, and you're fairly confident that they're not going to break anything. They don't have the option really. They could go and create new DAX measures, but on the whole, if they stick to the items you presented, nothing should get broken. So I'm just going to create a quick dashboard that allows you to see by actor kind of how their ratings are performing over time. So to do that, I'm going to bring in the text filter, and I'm going to bring in the actor name. Now at the moment, if you type something in here, you don't really see anything. There's no other controls. So I tend to like to do, if you're going to use a text filter, which is not a default control, it's on the marketplace. If you're going to use a text filter, you can bring in a table and bring in the same kind of properties. So we're going to bring in the name of the actor, the number of movies they've been in, and perhaps the average rating. So now when you search in here, we get all the people with Tom in their name. And if we order it by number of movies, we see the most prolific. This is kind of okay, but it can give a long tail. And if there's no filters on this, it will show every single actor, and then it behaves strangely, and you try and scroll down and it moves around. So what I tend to do is limit this table here to be a certain number of rows. So in the filter pane, you can change the filtering under the name, and you can ask it to give you the top 10, say. And whenever you do a top 10, it needs to know how you're ordering it. So in this instance, we're going to order it by the number of movies they've been in. So if we apply that filter, it just gives us the top 10 movies, the top 10 actors by the number of movies. So now if we filter by a specific actor, we only get 10, and the 10 that have been in the most movies in our data set. To see this over time, we can now quickly bring in year and then the average rating. So now I'm going to make this a line chart. At the moment, this isn't filtered by anything, but if we click on Tom Hanks, we can now see the performance of his movies over time, and perhaps we can add a trend line onto this. So that's under the analytics tab on the control, and you can just say add a trend line. So by clicking on Tom again, you can see that over time the average rating is slightly increasing, and then you can click on different actors, and this all updates. And then even if you remove all filters, this will be now all movies, and you can see there's a downward trend on the rating of movies over time. This is loading from 1950 actually, so when I've looked at the data set behind this, it seems that the older a movie is, the less reviews it gets, and it makes sense that only the better movies will get more reviews. So that's kind of why there's a, in my opinion anyway, that's kind of why there's a, the movies have better ratings the older they get. I'm just going to add a couple more elements onto this report so we can see perhaps the movies a particular person has been in. So if we bring in another table, we could bring in the movie name, average rating and votes. Now at the level of a movie, it's no longer average rating or average vote, it's just the rating. So if you double click on the measures, you can actually rename them just for this control. So now when we click on Mr. De Niro, we can order it by rating, and we see all the movies that are related to him. Finally, I'm going to bring in a pie chart so we can see this by genre, and this does illustrate then one of the things you have to consider with a many-to-many join. So we bring in genre, and then bring in number of movies. This is interesting. So by default, a pie chart, when you do cross-filtering, so a cross-filter is when you click on one visual and the other visual changes. By default, a pie chart doesn't filter, it highlights. So what if you click on someone over here, there's a little tiny segment in the middle that says this is his. So there's still 4,500 movies, but 52 are to do with Robert De Niro. To change this behavior, you can click on the control you're going to be filtering from, click on format, and you can edit the interaction. So this button isn't always used, but it allows you to say, well, which visuals filter other visuals. So if you click on the table here, we can see by default it's going to highlight, but we can say actually we just want to filter the whole visual. And we can now turn off the interactions because it kind of clutters up the workspace a bit. So now when you click on a particular actor, it tells you that there's 52 drama, 32 crime, 22 comedy. Now, you'll notice that there's 52 movies marked as drama, 32 marked as crime, but when you add those together, it's higher than this number of movies reporting over here. And that is because many of Robert's movies fall both in the crime and in the drama category. So you just need to be mindful. These numbers here will total up to a number that's much bigger than the distinct number of movies on this side. I think it'd be more valid in this instance to just tweak the visualization, and we can turn off the legend and have it as on the data labels, which I've lost. Detail labels, and instead of the value, we'll just give it the category and the percentage. So I do think it's valid to say that nearly 30% of his movies relate to drama, 20% relate to crime, and there isn't any overlap when you calculate those percentages, even though an individual movie might be in several of these categories. That was, broadly speaking, where I was going to go up to today. I'm happy to answer any of the Q&As that have come through.
Thanks, Lewis. Not much coming through on the Q&A there. A couple of points from me. I do like the fact you just alluded to Robert De Niro. You just called him Robert. And what is your relationship with Robert?
I don't have one, I'm sorry.
Only joking. Liked it. And a great kind of overview of many to many, and why you've really got to know your data, haven't you, when you do this. And in terms of turning off the numerics on that pie chart there, you know, it's really a great idea to understand, if you're going to present something, you've got to present something so that it doesn't cause confusion. The whole idea, I guess, of why we're here, not we, you know, we're here, but as data professionals, is to take some effectively ones and zeros, some data, and present that as information in a clear and thoughtful way. So appreciate that. Right, what do we do now, guys? Do we hand over to Alex? Do we wrap up?
I'm just going to make a couple of announcements. So if you could share my screen, and that would be great.
Over here. Thanks, Sheb. Share a screen for me, and then we will get you up there. You, my friend, are live.
Excellent. So I wanted to just make an announcement about our final episode, so our season 1 finale. So we're coming to the end of our British season, first season of this Power BI Lunch and Learn, and we wanted to get everyone involved. So everyone who's attended, we wanted to get you all involved. So we are having a Power BI pub quiz, right, live on the session in episode 6, 27th of May 2020. You'll all have a link to an online form. So we're going to send you an online form where you're going to fill in your questions and answers. You fill in your answers and submit those during the session as well. And we will be giving prizes away for the ones with the highest score. So there'll be around 20 questions. It won't be, you know, too pressing. We'll have a few ones on visuals, a few on the apps, and we'll sort of tailor it to what we've been covering in the past sort of number of weeks, and perhaps a couple of exam type questions in there as well, just to for those who are looking to take the Power BI exam coming up soon as well. So yes, and Ben's also going to have a randomizer, so we're going to take everyone who's attended these sessions, and we're going to randomly choose some prize winners in the last show as well. So make sure you attend, make sure you share, make sure you get your colleagues involved, because the more people we have, the more fun it is, and we can test ourselves against our colleagues as well. Okay, so make sure you're there, 27th of May, that's in 2 weeks time. Our season finale for Power BI Lunch and Learn.
Sheb, what do we need?
Yep.
Can I just ask a question on that? Obviously, because I've well prepared this in advance.
Yeah.
Do we need people's names or login details when we've logged in? What are we going to randomize on? We need to randomize on something, don't we?
Yes, we will randomize on something. We will discuss and we will let them know.
I think it's fair to say, though, we will let them know, and it's obviously going to be on some sort of name, isn't it? So make sure when you've logged in, or if you log in next week, we might take the details as soon as we can to be worked out. But yeah, be prepared, I guess, people, to give us your name if you want to be in the draw. We won't use it for anything else.
Yes, thank you very much. That's good you mentioned that. Next week we have episode 5. So we'll be doing an introduction to DAX. We'll be looking at variables, and Ben will be covering a topic that he will let us know this week. Lewis, he will be covering introduction to DAX. So we have a lot of formulas in there. We have sum X, we have concatenate, we have concatenate X. When to use, when do we use this and when do we use the other? So we'll be going through those. We'll also be looking at when to use the calculator, when to use the filter, what's the difference between, and making sure we're using the right one in the right scenarios. And then also, just to finish up, we'll be creating a couple of variables in a DAX formula measure as well, so you can see how you can sort of put those together as well. So next week's going to be a good session for DAX. If you're interested in DAX, we'll have a little intro to that, and you should be up and running with that afterwards. And Ben, hopefully, before the week's up this week, will tell us what he will be talking about next week. Okay. Thank you all for joining. Appreciate your support. Please keep sharing and following us online. We are trying to make this the biggest and best online webinar for Power BI there is, and you guys are continually helping us to do that. So please continue to do so. We've got some big announcements for season 2 that's going to be starting in June as well. So don't forget about that. Alex, I'll pass you back over just to top and tail this. Thanks everyone. I'll see you next week.
Cheers, Sheb. So thank you very much to Sheb and to Lewis for today's talks. Really informative, really great. Thank you for everyone's participation in the Q&A. Do keep those questions coming in if you have them, and we'll endeavour to answer them. This session will be played back, and we'll send you the link. We'll also share the files via OneDrive. As I said, we'll be back this time next week with the DAX variables and Ben's talk to be confirmed. But thank you very much for today. Thank you to all our speakers, and also to Sheb for helping out and answering the Q&A stuff. And we will see you same time next week, the 20th of May at 12:30. Enjoy your week and take care. All the best.
That is now ended.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.